Today, in current events from a Christian perspective, we check on the White House Christmas decor and do a little year-to-year comparison. That'll be interesting. Then we look at California's latest episode of Gender Fluid by Toy Section Rules. And after that, we go out to Iowa, where there's a new display for Christmas from the Satanic Temple. And then finally, we take a first look at a movie from the infamous director of The Princess Bride, only this time he really doesn't like Christians or something like that. All this and more today. I'm Matt Odegaard, and this is Church Public. Welcome back to Church Public. Really appreciate you stopping by today. I'm your host, as always, Matt Odegaard, and I appreciate your support. Like and subscribe. Hit all of those buttons if you want to. I would appreciate that. This channel is dedicated to current events from a Christian perspective to help you live out your faith, and I really want to help you do that in whatever way we can. We look at current events from a Christian perspective so that in all sorts of different varieties of events, you can know how to react. Let's go ahead and get started with some news. So the first thing that we're going to look at today is a story from the White House. Now, the White House, obviously, every year for decades have decorated the White House for Christmas. We're going to look at this Christmas video. Actually, I'll pull it up right now. So if you're just listening, you may want to head to ChurchPublic.com or probably YouTube. Usually they're okay with me posting things like this. We'll see how it goes. If you're just listening, I'll just describe on the top. We have the current administration's take on Christmas, and then on the bottom we have the previous administration's take on Christmas. I'll just say it that way. So if you're just listening, on the bottom, I mean, it is a lovely Christmas decor. It's very bright white lights, lots of Christmas trees, lots of festivity. Even at the end of this clip, there is a manger scene right there. Again, baby Jesus in the manger. On the top, it is apparently some sort of take on Tchaikovsky with tap dancers. It really looks more like the Hunger Games. I'm sorry to say, I don't know how else to describe this, but there's crazy outfits, crazy hats, tap dancing all over the place. It looks like a kid's imagination or something. I think it's Tchaikovsky. I think it's the Rat King's situation. There's just a difference here. And that's it. That's the only thing that I want to draw. I just want to draw the parallel that one of these has a manger and is very focused on what is going on for Christmas. The other one is a nutcracker. Now, I'm a fan of Tchaikovsky. I think he's fine. However, from a biblical worldview perspective, the Rat King's court and it's not about Jesus at all. It's just not. There's no stretch that I can draw to make the Nutcracker Suite fit into a Christian worldview. Sorry, I just can't do it. I think art is fine, but if you're decorating the White House for Christmas, maybe it should include Christmas. That's all I'm going to say about that. Let's move on to some other things. We got a couple more topics to go through today. We're going to actually move off Christmas and then come back in a little bit. We're going to go to, once again, California. Yep, we got to go back to California. And this is a story that I came across. I just think it's interesting, and I think it's interesting from the worldview perspective of if you have kids, if you do shopping, if you do either of those things, you're going to begin to run into this, and you're going to run into it more and more, and that is the fact that the government wants to control how you raise your children. They just do. I've said this a lot. I know you say, well, I don't believe you. Here's an example of it. This is a new law that is trying to be passed in California, and it should go into effect, I think, in the beginning of the year. And it's a new law that goes into effect in retailers. And you ask, well, is it addressing the homeless problem? Is it a law to clean up the streets around these different shopping centers? Is it getting rid of rampant crime that has affected stores across America and especially in California, where many stores have had to close or leave areas entirely? Is it to keep communities safe, to make them more livable? No, it's none of those things. It's a law that addresses apparently a much worse concern: gender-neutral toy sections. So this is via the Daily Mail. California retailers that refuse to have a gender-neutral section for children will be fined up to $500 under Gavin Newsom's new bill. This governor signed this legislation way back in 2021. I actually talked about it then. You probably don't remember because the world goes so fast. That was so long ago. You may or may not even remember that. But I did talk about this story back in 2021, requiring some retail stores in California to have a gender-neutral section for children. That means boys' toys and girls' toys all together, apparently. Retailers have to do this, quote unquote, regardless of whether they've been traditionally marketed for boys or girls. It's just a difference that they're going to have to smash all these toys together, making it much more difficult for parents to figure out where to find anything. This legislation, Assembly Bill 10584, enacted on January 1st, 2024. And if they don't, as I mentioned, retail department stores will have to pay penalties, $250, $500. Department stores that have a total of 500 or more employees in California, they have to have this in order to sell childcare items or toys. California Democratic Congressman Evan Lowe backed this bill and said to the Associated Press, quote, "We need to stop stigmatizing what is acceptable for certain genders and just let kids be kids. My hope is," this is continue on what he says, "the bill encourages more businesses across California and the United States to avoid reinforcing harmful and outdated stereotypes," end quote. So let's pause here for a second and ask, what does it mean? We need to let kids be kids and stop reinforcing harmful stereotypes. Like, I mean, and what does it mean? Honestly, I have no idea. If you let kids be kids, they would actually live up to stereotypes. I mean, that's what stereotypes are. There's a stereotype that is boys will be boys because boys will be boys. Any parent or uncle or anybody who has known children know that boys are boys and they will be boys. I have a few boys. They're just like boys. And of course, girls will be girls. Those are the stereotypes. But he says those are harmful stereotypes. Letting a boy be a boy is harmful now. Apparently you want a boy to be a girl. I don't really know. But the state of California thinks boys should be girls, I guess, or vice versa. Anyway, you ask then, as he said, how does the average toy section in the average toy store reinforce harmful stereotypes? Aren't stereotypes just generalized knowledge about a thing that's based in truth? If boys are boys, I mean, aren't they? I don't know. Again, apparently they're not in California. They're not supposed to be boys. If you're super confused about all of this, let's look to California State Representative Evan Lowe, among some others, who go into some more detail in this video clip, trying to explain how and why, quote unquote, gender toys are dangerous.
A California bill is on the table that would ban stores from displaying children's clothes and toys in separate boys and girls sections in big department stores. And stores that don't get on board could face hefty fines. News 8's Teresa Sardina reports from Claremont with more on what this bill entails.
Steve, once this revised bill goes into effect, children's sections at large retailers like Target are going to look quite different.
Maybe one of these ones.
Assembly Bill 1085 to ban stores from displaying children's clothing and toys in separate boys and girls sections. The bill was introduced by Bay Area Assemblyman Evan Lowe in February, requiring stores with more than 500 employees, like Target, Marshalls, or Macy's, to display children's clothing and toys in one undivided area of its sales floor.
I am a parent of a trans child.
Parents sparked the conversation.
I still am in favor of combining things, and then people can choose.
I think it's a wonderful idea to smush girl-boy stuff together.
Some ask, why change it?
Just because it has a male and female designation doesn't mean that you can't walk to, you know, a male toy and vice versa.
Let's just have a kids section.
News 8 reaches out to Lowe's office as he's aiming to reduce stigma and bullying. In fact, he says remove it. He provides a statement, quote, "Children should be able to express themselves freely and focus on more important things than stereotypical gender norms." Major retailers like Target and others support this legislation, and many of these businesses already have gender-neutral kids sections. The state is actually playing catch-up on this issue. Toys are toys. Let's make safe spaces for all children and let kids be kids. The bill that was introduced last month was amended and finalized in March. Clothing was taken out. Clothing will remain separate in boys and girls sections. Stores that don't comply would face fines up to $1,000. Soon you will find toys, hygiene, and home items in a combined section, as you would find board games, books, and bikes. The revised bill will be introduced April 1st, and according to Assemblyman Evan Lowe's office, this bill will go into effect by January 2024. For more on the story, you can visit CBS.
Okay, so I mean, you got most of that, but here's the thing. There's a couple of points in there you need to hear. A lot of stores are already doing this. So if they're doing it, why do we need to bill to make sure that the stores are doing it? So then it's redundant and not necessary. But apparently part of it is to make sure if you're a young girl, you can find a police car, fire truck, dinosaur, whatever. And if you're a boy, you can find, you know, a dollhouse or a glitter piece or something. I don't know. And so we're trying to remove this stigma by going to a different location. But you even heard in this story, there's nothing stopping a person from going from one aisle to another aisle. In fact, kids have all done that forever. I've had kids for almost 20 years now, and there has never, ever been a security guard in the store who said, hey, you, kid, you're in the wrong gender aisle. Literally, never happened to my family, or I can pretty safely say anyone else in the history of the world. No one is sitting there policing which aisle you need to go in. That's just not happening. And it wouldn't happen because that's ridiculous. Because kids like toys and they just go to buy toys. So this is just, it's ludicrous and unnecessary. And we've never encountered the store security saying, stop, don't go into the boys section or don't go into the girls section. That's just not happening. So what's the point of this? It sounds like many stores like Target, we just heard from, they're already doing it, but now we need a bill to make sure the stores do it. Let's go beyond this and ask the bigger worldview question. If you have girls and you have boys' toys, which you admit here, then even if you put the girls' toys and the boys' toys in the same place, are they not still girls' toys and boys' toys? To be more clear, you seem to be suggesting that some girls like to play with boys' toys and some boys like to play with girls' toys. Okay, so what? That's likely true. I've seen that happen. It seems the underlying assumption here is that you actually literally become a girl by playing with the girl toys, even if you're a boy. Or you become a boy by playing with girls' toys or boys' toys. I'm so confused now. I don't know. But if you play with the wrong toy, apparently you literally become that other gender. But of course, that makes no sense in any universe. And of course, we all know this. If you become a girl by playing with a dollhouse, that's just ridiculous. If you become a boy by playing with a truck, that's also ridiculous. Do you become a dinosaur by playing with a dinosaur? Of course, none of this is real. None of it's true. Everyone knows it's not true. We're just trying to force down things that aren't true to make you think that in some universe it is. But it's not. And all this bill and all this useless pandering seems to do is reinforce that there are actually gender stereotypes. There are differences between boys and girls. And everybody knows this. The more you cry that you want the toys for something else, the more you remind everyone that there are toys for boys and there are toys for girls. There's no middle kind of toy. And if there are, then it's a toy for everybody, not a toy for some other third category of gender or 17th category of gender. There's just no such thing. There's just boy toys and there's girl toys. That's it. The more that you say, well, let's put all the toys together so we don't know which ones are girls' toys and which ones are boys' toys. But you've already told me that fire trucks are boys' toys and castles and glitter are girls' toys. I don't care. Apparently, you really care. There's no non-binary toy. A toy is just a toy, or everybody plays with the toy and then it's just a toy too. You're only noticing that there's two types of toys here. One is for boys and one is for girls. And of course, that's just binary. So, California, you can make silly toy laws and try and create new spaces, but the thing that you cannot erase, no matter how hard you try, is that there are in fact only two genders. One is a boy and one is a girl. All right. Let's go from this ridiculous thing in California to what should be a much more common sense place like Iowa. Iowa. I mean, after all, it's Iowa. What random thing could happen in Iowa? But of course, weird things are now happening in Iowa too. In Iowa, and I was on social media a couple days ago. I was out of town, so I couldn't post on this particularly, but I've been thinking about it over the past several days, and I have some thoughts about this. It is Christmas time for me here. I don't know when you're listening to this, but maybe Christmas time for you as well, which means people decorate for Christmas. In my house, we actually decorate really early for Christmas, and that's fine because I love Christmas, because I love what Christmas signifies, which is Jesus Christ. Put the Christ back in Christmas. However, over in Iowa, apparently somebody got a hold of this and said, you don't have to decorate for Christmas anymore. We're going to decorate for Satan or something like that. I'm just going to show you this picture. This is in the Iowa State Courthouse, and this is done by the Satanic Temple. The Satanic Temple. So if you're just listening, this is a shrouded figure in a dark cape with the head with the horns and all that jazz. Candles everywhere in front of it. It has apparently the tenets of the Satanic Temple, which I've gone over in detail in previous episodes. I'm not going to do that again here. It's the satanic display for Christmas in the Iowa State Capitol. So, according to local reports, under the guise of religious freedom, an organization called the Satanic Temple has installed a satanic display in Iowa's Capitol building. Sorry, I think I might have said State House, but Capitol building. During the Christmas season, this has been installed. Yet, the group admits itself, it doesn't even worship Satan, and some of them don't even believe in Satan. So you have this display for the Satanic Temple in the Capitol building for Christmas, and the people that put it on don't even believe there is an actual Satan. Make all of this make sense, because none of this makes any sense. And of course it doesn't make any sense, because I think, this is just me talking, my opinion now, not that it all isn't my opinion, but this is my opinion. It seems like just a prank by the Satanic Temple to get a rise out of conservative Christians. And of course it has. The social medias have been all over the place. And there was even a long exchange by a pastor / state representative in Iowa arguing that this display has a place in the Capitol because of religious freedom. And of course, some people, I would say rightly, are claiming this has no place in the state capitol or any public display at all. So I want to look at what the actual Christian worldview that we need to understand in this is. And I think this is important. This is why I do Church Public. This is why we talk about current events from a Christian perspective, because you have pastors out there saying that you just need to allow everything. You need to allow every expression of religion possible. But that just cannot be real. That can't be a real thing. And you can put this in two categories. I'm going to get a little bit technical. I'm going to try to make it make sense. I try not to get too technical here because I know it makes people go asleep or just throw their phone out the window. And I don't want to do that for you. But it is important that we get just a little bit technical so we understand what we're talking about. And the first one is, there's kind of two categories to this. There's religious neutrality and religious equality. I'm going to describe those a little bit, trying to be as simple as I can. You have those that argue that all religions are the same and can do whatever they want. I did a long episode on the coexist sticker, covering all of the different religions that it entails, showing, I think, with great detail and clarity that any of the religions, they don't agree with each other. They can't. They just can't. They are not equal. And so in America, especially a Christian nation like America, you can argue that it's not, but it was founded as one. Go and read the original documents. You can't say all religions are equal so they can do whatever they want. You can't. You can't do that. I'll give you just a couple of examples. The Aztecs were a religion. I know they're not around anymore, but they're an extreme religion, so they give a good example basis for this because this is likely to happen again, and there are certain parts of South America where it still happens. The Aztecs sacrificed babies and whole human people as a religion. That is clearly not an equal religion. The Hindus, there were certain parts of India where they conscripted young girls, and I mean young girls, into the temples for prostitution. This is clearly not equal. I could go on and give many, many examples. I'm not going to for time here, but just think about this. The religions are not equal. Religious equality is not a thing in America or anywhere else for that matter. Try going to a Muslim country and preaching Christ openly on the street corner and see how bad the consequences will be immediately. It's just the reality. They're not equal. In a similar but more subtle way, we've been lulled into this place of thinking that religious neutrality is a thing. And I actually hear this in churches sometimes, but neutrality is not the case. This goes back to who is the ultimate authority. Who is it? We have liberals masquerading as Christians or conservatives masquerading as conservatives who claim we all just need to get along. The old song goes, live and let live. But this is not a way to actually govern. God is sovereign. God does judge and will judge the rulers of the law and of this land, whether you want to admit it or not. God is going to do that. So we have to understand that there is no neutrality. You're either for Christ or you're for something else. And you have to understand there's just no equality here. There's no right to worship Satan from a theological standpoint. We'll get just theological for a second. You don't have a right. No one has a right to worship Satan from a theological standpoint. Worshiping Satan is inherently wrong because Satan just signifies theologically sin and the wrong thing. That is what he signifies. You can quote to me the tenets of the Satanic Church. I quoted them for you. They are incongruent with each other. That's a problem. But ultimately, what they point to is sin. They point to the fact that you should live in sin. Therefore, you cannot make an argument that it is inherently right and better for society to worship Satan. It's just wrong. You can't do that. And this is where we must begin in our view of the law as well. We need to extend our theology into law. This is how the country of America was founded. This goes back to Lex Rex. It goes back to the Magna Carta. Again, I'm not going to get into all of that right now, but if you want to do some study on that, read through that and figure out that in law, it comes from theology because it comes from morality. Moral evil, like sinning and worshiping Satan, or even immoral behavior cannot be a quote-unquote right, even if the government says they want it to be. It just can't be that thing. So I'll read this passage to you from 1 Peter 2. Governors who are sent by him to punish or those who do wrong and to commend those who do right. So this is 1 Peter 2:14. Peter is saying, God has set up rulers and leaders who are there to punish wrongdoers and approve of those who do right. Rulers, even non-Christian ones, are charged by God with separating moral good from moral evil. That is their job. Some of them do this and some of them don't do it. That's another matter. But the reality is, in the kingdom view, which is the real view of life, they're called to do that. Even non-believers should be able to see what's morally good and morally evil. For the most part, they can, though sometimes they get confused. And they should understand that there's no quote-unquote right to public acceptance of moral wrong. If you are going to do something wrong, you don't get a right to continue to do something wrong, even though there are some people who would argue for that. You either have a moral right or you have a moral wrong. Rights exist to protect those that wish to do moral good. That is what a right is. The government does not establish the rights. Again, read through the amendments of the Constitution. The government exists to protect the rights that you already have to do the right thing. You cannot have a right to do something wrong. That's literally right and wrong. You're mixing metaphors. You can't do those things. The opposite side of the right existing to do moral good, rights are supposed to be protected against moral wrong. The laws, the justice, the punishment is supposed to be produced by the government to protect you from evil, to protect you from moral wrong. Yes, at some level, we allow moral evil as a consequence of bad actions, but at some point, authorities, governments, police need to step in and stop wrongdoing. This is the justice system in action. They're coming in to stop moral evil from destroying community. And we have seen, I can give so many examples of the law not working well and not doing right, but we know that it's supposed to work that way. The laws, the rules are placed by legislative representatives, people who write laws, to determine where these lines should be in given circumstances. And those move a bit in different circumstances. That's normal because there must be a line. Too much liberty, the society has no order. We've seen that. Too much law creates oppression. We've seen that too. Andrew T. Walker wrote this book, Liberty for All. It's a great book. I highly recommend it. I read it this summer. It's a treatise on religious liberty. And he says this, he says this out of the book in an article about it. He said, even John Locke, one of the most influential philosophers who would frame American political thought, believed atheists threaten public order and deserve no toleration. Let's unpack that for a moment. So one of the philosophers behind the ideals of America said, you can't have atheists or it will threaten public order. They are not to be tolerated. This flies in the face of this idea of religious liberty, but you have to understand there is an order and a moral order that must be contained by allowing rights to foster and prosper and pursuing justice by punishing evil. That's just the reality of a civilization that's going to flourish at all. Walker continues on with a litmus test from a constitutional perspective on religious liberty. And I like this. And I'm going to read through these. I believe there's 6 or 7 steps, questions to figure out, is this something that deserves religious liberty or not? First question, does a religion occupy a traditional understanding of what a religion is? In other words, is it about a God, theist, or is it atheist, not about a God? The Church of Satan, the The Satanic Temple, it's not about a god. They even say they don't believe in Satan. Number 2, does the religion have a history and tradition behind it to our germane to our nation's history and culture? And the obvious answer to that one, with the Satanic Temple, is no. Number 3, is the religion widespread in its practice with the nation? Obviously not. Number 4, would the reasonable observer understand the religious expression to advance some sort of civic and moral good? I'm going to show you this picture again. Do you look at this picture of a skeleton creature with horns? Is that saying I need to go be at peace with my neighbor and love my neighbor? Is the general person going to look at this and go, oh, I need to go hug somebody? My guess is no. That's my assertion in this. All right, continuing on. Number 5, would the same reasonable observer judge the display to advance a good purpose? Is there any redeeming value to the religious display, or is it merely to offend for the sake of offense? I've already covered this, but I think this is just meant to offend. They don't believe in Christmas. They don't believe in Satan. They don't worship Satan. What is it there for, and why at Christmas? What does this have to do with anything? Literally, what does this have to do with anything? I don't have an answer. I don't think they have an answer. They haven't provided an answer. Number 6, does America have a tradition of allowing sacrilegious displays in government buildings? While the answer more now is yes, the historic answer is an obvious no. And then number 7, is it a sincerely held belief? As I've mentioned already, no, they don't even believe in Satan. So what is it for? What's the point? Walker concludes, quote, given the fact that those who sponsor the display deny any sincerely held satanic beliefs, the last question is settled, and the satanic displays, would fail all the factual questions of the test above. Satanism, whether real or pretend, is an outright celebration of evil, darkness, and perversity. So, in my view, there should be no satanic displays in government buildings, end quote. And I wholeheartedly agree. Of course, this is exactly right. There's no freedom of religion to put the Satanic Temple up in a state capitol building. Of course there isn't. This doesn't make any sense at all. And yet, and I think this is the most pertinent thing. 2 points here. This is not California. It's not New York. It's not even Oregon. This is Iowa. Iowa. This should make you stop and pause. No matter where you live, this kind of thinking is in your town, probably even in your church. And this was the most disturbing to me. Iowa State Representative John Dunwell, Republican and Christian pastor, said this, quote, for me, I would rather have an evil, blasphemous display or no display than have the state dictate what they think is appropriate, end quote. Really, really, you are a state representative and you're saying the state does not get to decide what is appropriate. If that is the case, tell me what your job is. You are a legislator to tell and make laws for the people of the state. If that is not determining what is appropriate, then literally what are you doing? What is your job? And I would counter with, that is exactly your job. Your job is to make laws, to say what is appropriate and what is not, and then attach punishment to those things that are not. That is actually specifically, that is the only thing you are there for. If you're there for anything else, why are you there? And that seems inappropriate to me. But think about all this, considering what I've shared. Is it better to have a satanic display in the state capitol or a Christian pastor state representative to say, no, we're not going to be worshiping Satan in our capital because this is immoral, and as a theologian, a Christian, a state leader, I will fight against such things. That's what I would like to say. I would like to stand up and say, no, Church of Satan, we're not going to do this. We're not going to put a whatever representation of Satan who you don't even believe in the state capitol during Christmas time and say, oh, that's all well and good. Why? Why would you not say, no, we're not going to do this? I'm just a little burned up about this, because if we're not guarding what Christianity is, if we're not guarding what faith is, then what are we doing? If this is not your role as pastor, Christian, state representative, what is your role? What are you there for? You are literally a legislator in the state, and yet you say you're not supposed to deem what is appropriate and what is not. I don't get it. I don't get it. All right, let's turn to something else, because I'm done with this one. Sorry about that. Need a little drink after that one. All right. So let's look at one more story today. Yeah, I I was deciding whether or not I'm going to do this one or do it in a different fashion, but I'm going to go ahead and do this today. Now, I'm not going to play the clip of the movie, but we're going to talk about a movie. Because every time I play a clip for a movie, I get banned off the socials, and I don't know what that's about, but I'm not going to play it. You can go look it up. It's all over the social medias, especially X or Twitter, for those of you who've been around for more than 5 minutes. So there is a film that's coming out, and this film, I would call it an anti-Christian nationalist film, and it has caused quite a stir on social media. Like I said, I'm not going to play the film. I'll just show you this picture. This is one of the trailers here. Rob Reiner is apparently directing, producing the film, and he says on this tweet where he put this movie out, it's called God and Country is the name of the movie. He said, quote, "Christian nationalism is not only a danger to our country, it is a danger to Christianity itself. Our film will be coming to theaters in February. Watch the trailer here." And then he posts the trailer there. Again, you can go to his X Twitter page or wherever you'd like. It contains a lot of people whom you'd recognize, like the VeggieTales guy, Phil Vischer, and Moore, and David French, and all kinds of other people that if you're in the Christian world at all, you know who they are. But this is part of the problem. So this Christian nationalist movie, or God and Country, I'm just going to call it the Christian nationalist movie. It seems to just promote for you to just not go into the world at all. Again, this is why I bring this up. It seems like this film is all about hiding in your basement, not sharing your faith in public at all. And as I mentioned, pretty much every time, faith is using your heart and soul and mind and strength, which means all of you, which means everywhere you go. That's just the way faith is. And you need to be able to express your faith throughout your whole life. Yes, you need to be as wise as a serpent and as innocent as a dove, but that doesn't mean you don't talk about your faith ever. It means you need to talk about your faith. So this picture, this film, God and Country, says there's a clear and present danger presented by Christian nationalism. This trailer for the film, as I just showed, it says it explores right-wing religious extremism and the danger it poses, to United States and Christianity itself. So I showed you the post. You can go and watch the trailer if you want to. I think there's a couple things we need to know from a Christian worldview perspective as we're about to see this movie hit theaters. Rob Reiner is not a Christian. I think that's important. I think that's important to note that the main driver of this entire film doesn't believe in Jesus, and yet is arguing a certain form of Christianity is going to destroy Christianity. Sure, there have been people throughout history who know something about the faith, but the people who know the most about faith are people who are faithful. That's pretty much true for every faith, religion, philosophy. I mean, that should be obvious, but you should take anything with a grain of salt from somebody who's promoting it that doesn't actually believe in it. He's saying that Christianity is bad for certain reasons that he's going to show you, and all the while is not a Christian. It's kind of a big deal. I feel like that's a big deal. Meanwhile, this blew up on the social medias. Students for Life President Kristen Hawkins noted one of the film's villains was Scott Smith. I'm going to show you that picture right here. And actually, this is two pictures. So if you're watching, what you're seeing on the, let's see, I'm going to see which side of your screen. I want to say I might have my lefts and rights mixed up. But anyway, one side of your screen is a screen grab from the movie trailer. One side of your screen is a screen grab from the Federalist, where he was acquitted of this. And again, if you're just listening and not watching, this was a guy who was arrested and taken out of a school board meeting because he said that his daughter was assaulted in school, and he was very angry about it, and he was taken away by the police, and then later found not guilty, but he was still taken away by the police. This movie is saying he is the bad guy. He is the bad guy, the dad, for standing up for his daughter when she was assaulted in school. He's the bad guy. That's what you hear. That is the identification of what Christian nationalism is, according to this movie, according to these people. The school board meeting in Loudoun County, he went in. I actually talked about this it was several months ago at this point, so I'm not going to get into the details of it too much. You can look at it. But she said, showing the arrest of the dad at that school board meeting because his daughter was sexually assaulted as if he is the bad guy is a wild narrative choice. That's what Hawkins said. Here's the bottom line. And here's where I know some of you have probably already tuned out and thrown your phone away because you're like, I can't believe he's talking about Christian nationalism. We can't talk about that. I don't care. There's a lot of definitions of it. I'm not going to get into that. I've talked about it a little bit in the past. I have a lot of thoughts about it. I'm trying to work those out in an intelligible way so that we can all understand what it is. But the bottom line is, you can call yourself one or not. You can understand the definition or not. You can make up your own definition or not. It doesn't matter. You can argue for it. You can argue against it. I don't care. But you are fighting the wrong battle. And my point with this story is this. It's frustrating when Christians go against something that's clearly Christian, whether or not they don't like it or fighting against it. They're fighting the wrong battle. The left doesn't care. The liberals don't care. The politicians, the media, the celebrities, they don't care. We saw this with Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House. I might even have that clip here still. Time accused the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, of being a front person for Christian nationalism because he said he reads the Bible and does what it says. This is my point, and you need to understand this. If you don't hear anything else, understand anything else, understand this. The politicians, media, celebrities, nobody on the left cares. If you say you're for Jesus, if you read your Bible, if you do what your Bible says, if you're for marriage, and that's man and woman and child, if you're for family, which is man and woman and child, if you're against abortion, you will, hear this, you will be labeled a Christian nationalist sooner or later. You are not going to be able to escape this because that is the term that they have decided to use against you. They don't like you. They don't like Christ. As believers, we need to know what we believe. We need to live it out no matter what they say. And they're going to be saying some really ugly things about you if you follow Jesus and do what he says. This is what's going to happen. It's happened for hundreds and hundreds of years before, and it's going to happen again now. We're seeing the beginning of that, and it's going to get worse and worse. This is the direction the country is going. The world cannot see what is right, even though it's obvious. There's clear views of what is right, what's morally evil. We talked about that. To you and me, it may be clear, but to the non-believer, they're literally spiritually blind. The word tells us this. Here's a verse. The person without the Spirit does not accept the things that come from the Spirit of God, but consider them foolishness and cannot understand them because they are discerned only through the Spirit. Paul tells us in 1 Corinthians 2:14. Listen, for a long time, and in a lot of churches, pastors have been preaching and persuading congregants to just be nice. This nice, winsome way of loving your neighbor is intended to convert people without talking to them, without proselytizing, without evangelizing. You just be nice, and then they see nice, and then they know they love Jesus. This core idea is that they're just going to see your good deeds and become a follower of Christ. But the problem is, this strategy hasn't worked. It really hasn't worked at all. Yes, God has moved some things, but by and large, this strategy doesn't work. Christians don't understand the Bible. Christians don't read the Bible. They don't study theology. Then they hope something will magically change in their neighbors. And yes, the Spirit of God can do anything, but this is not the way Jesus himself told us to evangelize. So this is why this is important. We should read the Bible and do what it says. Yes, we're supposed to live like Christ, but this is not the way that Jesus told us to evangelize. Yes, you're gonna point to they should know, aspire, love. Sure, but what does that mean? What does it look like to love? Jesus himself says, therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you. Matthew 28:19 through 20. These are the words of Jesus. He says, go and make disciples. He says that of all nations. He says, baptize them. He says to teach them to obey commands. This is just not part of the nice strategy. And this is what the Christian nationalist label hits against. For a long time, decades and decades, Christians have just existed. And the state and the culture, they haven't cared. They just haven't cared whether you were Christian or not, because Christians were just nice people. Now, the way of Jesus goes directly against the culture. It goes directly against the state, and people are noticing this. The world has changed. It does not like the directive of Jesus that we just heard in Matthew 28. Christians are just not converting people because of the Christian niceness. Non-Christians are not failing to become Christians because Christians are not living right. Even if we could live out every virtue and do every single thing right, do it to its fullest, we would still be hated. I read that for you from Corinthians. They just don't see it. They don't understand what's right because the Spirit is the one who allows us to know what's right. And Jesus even told us this, because the world loves darkness. John 3:19, right after John 3:16. Go and read it. Light has come into the world, but people loved darkness instead of light because their deeds were evil. What is right and wrong is not apparent, or they even like doing what's wrong because it's more fun. Should we love our neighbor? Don't hear me wrong. Of course we should love our neighbor. We should sacrificially give all we possibly can and then some. However, don't be deluded by this movie or celebrity or pastor who says people will just love you back if you're just nice. Jesus was the nicest of all, and they hated him. If you stand with your Savior, they're going to hate you too. This is what we have to understand. As Jesus reminds you and reminds me, I've told you all these things, that in me you may have peace. In this world you have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. John 16:33. For Church Public, I'm Matt Odegaard. As always, I hope that you will keep the faith. Thanks again for stopping by. This is Church Public with Matt Odegaard. I really appreciate you. I hope that you like, subscribe, share this out with a friend if it's helpful. If you want to support for the end of the year, go to churchpublic.com/support. I love you. I appreciate you. I hope to see you next time. And this time I'll say Merry Christmas.